This is the Psychology to Live By podcast, where we discover how to live life a little better.
My well-being is so connected to my creativity. And when I can sense within myself that I'm not living, I guess, more aligned to my intuition and my essence and my emotions and my body, and like really in tune with myself, for one, like my creativity really suffers. Obviously my well-being is gonna suffer as well.
That's the voice of Harrison Storm, indie folk singer and songwriter. This is a wonderful conversation about music, mental health and creativity, in which we touched on many topics, including Harrison's background and trajectory to a musical career, songwriting and singing as self-discovery and emotional catharsis, the centrality of intuition for both well-being and creativity, as well as being in tune and true to self. Harrison's maturing as an artist and taking a broader, less attached outlook. Mindfulness and somatic therapy as methods to sustain creative output. Using the PEM acting method to cultivate his performance skills and elevate his experience of performance. The wonderful feeling of calm connectedness and authentic communication in performance, and how performing in this way feels like a better version of myself. The distinction between entertainers and artists, and the dilemma of a contemplative artistic life and feeling guilty about not achieving enough each day. It was a really delightful and insightful conversation, and I hope you really take a lot from it. All right, and here I am with Harrison Storm. How are you, Harrison?
Doing pretty good, getting over a cold, but happy to be here in high spirits regardless.
Fantastic. It'll give you a voice, that sort of husky,
yeah, exactly.
Sex appeal. Now, I'm very grateful for your time, and I'm looking forward to this conversation because we had a bit of a chat beforehand in our setup, and there's 4 or 5 things I think that we both share a deep interest in. One would be creativity itself, the creative process, what encourages it, what inhibits it. We could talk about the relationship between music and creativity and well-being and mental health. And we can also talk about the music industry, its impact on people's mental health. And finally, we may want to talk about what you've discovered, works for you in terms of not only the music, of course, that they will be interested in that, but also how you keep yourself balanced in an industry that doesn't help people keep balanced on average.
Yes. Sounds good.
All right. So maybe if we start, people are always curious to know just a little bit of your bio, but maybe if we slant it towards why you were drawn to music in particular, if you can give us a bit of a sense of where you've come from and how you've got to where you are.
What drew me to music? I think, I guess as briefly as I can put it, I grew up around a lot of sport, a lot of masculine energy, which was, really enjoyable. But there was obviously I guess the quote unquote toxic side to it. And just like that classic men not being able to speak about their emotions. I grew up with 2 sisters and a mother, and we were all very close, and a father. We're all very close. A lot of feminine energy, and there was a lot of musical instruments around my house. And yeah, I guess what drew me to music was that thing that was lacking in my social life was this inability to kind of talk about things that I was feeling. And music really provided that for me. I was listening to artists, male artists in particular, that were singing about things that I was really curious about and that I wasn't really talking about with any other male in my life, or, and yeah, so that kind of pushed me into music, and I was really curious about the expression and the creativity behind it all, and connecting with yourself. And I went to study at university. I studied something completely different, civil engineering.
That's quite different.
Very different. But decided to, yeah, drop out and pursue music. So I played music on the streets for many years, earning some money to record music, and then, yeah, I guess had some lucky breaks by putting myself out there. And yeah, one thing led to another, and music has been my career now for the past 7 to 8 years.
Okay, fantastic. Uh, I've no doubt there were lucky breaks, but it's been my observation that people who really are passionate about things and work towards them and work really hard at it and do it a lot, they tend to get lucky breaks.
Mm. Coincidentally.
Yeah, it's there's a guy, I can't remember his name right now, but he calls it one's luck surface area,
Mhm.
and you can make it larger by sharing your passion with as many people as you can.
Totally.
Uh, and okay, so that's very very interesting, and so that already we can kind of see there's a sort of in the Venn diagram of Harrison Storm and Chris Stevens, there's a big overlap,
Mhm.
and one of those overlaps is perhaps the you talked about a sort of more toxic, I guess, masculinity, and this desire to be able to be more expressive, and and implied in that, of course, is this movement towards increased well-being, because there was part of you that wasn't being able to be expressed. Um, so, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so do you think that was a sense that music was also going to help you be healthier, happier, more fully yourself?
Mm. Yeah, it's actually something that I'm thinking about a lot lately because, I mean, yeah, growing up in this environment of lack of talking about things, you know, that we're feeling, I needed to find an avenue for, I guess, self-discovery. Um, and I didn't have any other tools really. I wasn't, taught any ways of expressing myself. So music was really this avenue to learn more about myself and what I was feeling and connecting with myself. Um, and anytime I would feel like really upset or really confused about something, whether it was to do with relationships or the way the world worked or how I worked or whatever, I'd always kind of retreat to my bedroom and play my guitar and just try and just sing about what I was feeling about. Um, and yeah, you obviously become very connected to yourself. I became very isolated. I didn't really have any other friends that were making music or not that I knew of. It was something that was very private. Um, but it was also really enjoyable in that sense. There was isolation, but I didn't really feel alone. I felt like I had all of these kind of friends in the artists that I was listening to and the music that I was writing for myself. Like I'd write a song and then I'd lay in my bed and I'd listen to it and I could, like see myself like a part of myself that maybe no one else really saw. And it was
Mm.
really comforting. But now that I'm kind of getting older and I'm learning so many more tools for my well-being, I'm developing this different relationship to creativity, and the place that it used to come from has changed. And now I'm, yeah, having to redefine it and redefine what it means to me to make music, and especially from the place that I came from, very emotional place. Um,
Mm.
so it's an interesting place that I find myself in now because feel like I'm a bit of like an unsteady place creatively, and I'm really having to be more particular with how I approach things.
All right, so I think there's a few little things to tease out and unpack there,
Yeah.
but that's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's of course it's very common
Mm,
to think about music as a means of um, both expressing and evoking emotion.
mm,
This seems to be a key thing to the mystery that is music. There's no obvious reason why various tones and sequences and harmonies should have that effect, but clearly they do. I mean, there is some research on a thing called prosody, which is really the musical nature of speech.
Mm,
And different languages have different prosodies. Mothers naturally speak, and fathers actually speak in a sing-song way to young infants.
mm,
And so there probably is some sort of biological evolutionary function here, but still it's a mystery, right? So I think that's one little part of that. The other part is, as you say, this sort of transition you feel you're going through. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like music had a very cathartic function for you early on. As you said, you go into your bedroom, when you're going through a tough time, and it gave you a means of exploring, um, and perhaps understanding and expressing how you're feeling. And obviously, that's a very common function of music. And in the music industry, it's really common for that to be seen as the way that a person makes great art. There's this sort of image of the suffering artist. In this case, you weren't in a garret, you were in your bedroom. And of course, there's a truth to that. But where I guess I'm heading with this now is, you're suggesting perhaps you've got an additional lens that you're seeing music through now, not necessarily focused on an expression for suffering. Am I right there?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess leaning into that suffering artist was something that just happened. Yeah, I guess unconsciously. But now, I mean, the tools that I have at my disposal, like when I am feeling confused or emotional or needing to express something, I tend to do it. I feel like I've found maybe not like a more direct way, but just a way that is more manageable, and less uh, maybe random in the outcome of relieving that pent up emotion.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily the first thing I'm turning to is my guitar to help me through a certain emotion. I'm doing other things. So I,
Am
I
I allowed to ask what other things?
yeah, I mean, just some, it's more, I guess, somatic therapy.
Yeah.
So a lot of body work. Yeah, which is interesting in itself, coupled with music. Um, so yeah, I'm really having to when I do sit down to play the guitar now, and when I am feeling like a creative urge, it's just coming from a different place, and yeah, I think I'm just thinking about myself differently, and I'm also listening to music differently, as well. Trying not to get like too kind of sometimes analytical with listening to someone else's art, and how that affects me. But it's also allowed me to filter, I guess, the music that I do consume. And I guess over time you do have this refined sense of when you like really listen to a piece of music that really touches you. Um, it's becoming more refined. So I guess it's just getting to like a deeper level of connection with myself as a listener, and hopefully that same effect with the art that I am creating.
Yeah. I mean, uh, this might be an opportunity to talk a little bit about the psychology of creative process. 'Cause that seems to be where you're leaning there. Um, and uh, one of the one of the factors that really is predictive is this. I think it was Louis Pasteur who said that creativity was 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. I think it's about right. But there is this sort of constant process of refining, 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 refining. And it's a bit like I've used the analogy in the past. It's like Darwinian selection, that you just create thousands and thousands of variants, and some of them fit the ecological niche, right? So it's sort of, but there is this sort of, you're on a hunt, as it were, for something that more completely or more accurately captures a truth that you're pursuing, right? And I think it's natural. There's a maturity that grows as you start to intuitively feel like, no, this is the one, this is the direction. And that's another of the factors, is sort of, it's a particular type of emotional intelligence that's largely fed by intuition. And intuition is obviously, it's a real thing. It's not just, it's not just a prerogative of the females of the species. Excuse me. But it's this sensitivity to an emotional feeling when we're engaging with something, and it provides a sort of it provides sort of like provides signposts. When we don't know which way to go, there's a feeling which says go that way, or don't go that way. Right, and because there's a lot of research into what is intuition, and my feeling is that it's this sort of emotional orienting system. It's very fundamental to us. When we can't completely understand something cognitively, our best guide then is this intuitive feel, right? But here's the nub of it, that one should only really trust the intuition of someone who has expertise in that domain, because that person is selecting from a vast array of data, of information, right? So now to come back to you, you've always worked with your intuition, and it sounds to me like you began with this intuitive feel, I need something else apart from this cultural world I'm living in to express myself. Is this the way that you think about your creative enterprise, that it's largely this sort of intuitive exploration?
Yeah, I mean, like fundamentally, yes. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've always, there's always been, and I've always noticed, and it's taken me a long time to like put the patterns together.
Yeah.
But yeah, my well-being is so connected to my creativity. And when I can sense within myself that I'm not living, I guess, more aligned to my intuition and my essence and my emotions and my body, and like really in tune with myself. Um, for one, like my creativity really suffers.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, like obviously my well-being is gonna suffer as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just like this repetition of kind of experiencing that over years and years and years and years, where you just like the option to not look after yourself kind of slowly gets smaller and less. So
That sounds like getting old to me.
yeah,
No, but keep going. I don't want to distract you.
yeah. Um, but I mean, I've always had this kind of sense of wanting to kind of be as close to myself as possible, in the sense that I just
Yeah.
really want to know myself. Um, and it's been a real fight over the years to, yeah, like stay true to my authenticity. Um,
Wow, this is so good. This is so good, Harrison. Because if you looking at it from one direction, this is the polar opposite of that idea of the tortured artist.
mm,
Do you know what I mean? Like, and in fact, just I guess for the listeners, there's been obviously a mountain of research on the relationship between creativity and and mental ill health, for example.
Mm.
Uh, and the findings are astonishingly clear. There is no relationship. So when you take creativity broadly stated across all people, not just in the, in the aesthetic or performing arts, for example, or visual arts, but across all people, there's no relationship. And if anything, poor mental health is bad for people's creative process, right? Now, of course, it may subsequently provide very rich materials for artistic expression,
Mhm.
but not while the person's depressed or having panic attacks,
Mm. Yeah.
or is psychotic, for example. Um, but what I hear you saying is that there's this very intimate relationship between your creativity and your connection with yourself, as you said, your authenticity. And you said something in passing there that when you lose that connection, the creativity suffers. Is that did I hear
Mm.
you right?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, and this is such an important message, I think, for other younger uh, aspiring musicians, for example, or just people aspiring, because that's not always the way they think about it, right?
Mm.
Um, and so, the other question I wanted to ask you was: it was clear how you started your musical. I'm going to use that word journey
Hmm.
anyway,
Hmm.
um, but and you're talking about this sort of, and it's of course you're in the middle of what sounds like a transition with it, but it is the stimulus for the music somewhat different. It was clear as in the past it was based on, if I can say, suffering.
Mm.
Uh, is that less the case these days?
Yeah. I mean, like what you said before, I forget who you were quoting, but the 99%
Yeah.
was perspiration.
Perspiration, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever related more to that now. Because
Yeah.
I wake up, when I'm like not touring, for example,
Yeah.
I wake up and I'm like, oh, like I'm feeling good today. Like I might go outside and like go and experience the world, and um that kind of need to, I guess, put myself. I mean, it's just work, right? It's like
Hmm.
you have to sit down and be like, okay. But I guess in terms of exploring those creative impulses, uh, I almost find it like I mean, don't get me wrong, because I'm no enlightened being, so um,
Oh, you disappoint me, Harrison.
so when like I'm gonna have things that I don't understand, and they
Mm.
will be, fuel for a song or for an idea or for some creative thread. But I'm not getting consumed in them anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah. So it's also forcing me to be more creative. I mean, use my imagination more.
Yeah.
And I guess it's less coming from like a really painful personal experience, and it's more so like my objective view on something that's happened in the past, or maybe something that's currently happening, or something that I'm
Yeah.
imagining to happen. But there's just less like attachment um, and suffering in that particular thread or emotion. Uh,
Yeah, I understand. That's very interesting. It made me instantly think. Um, my mother was very involved in the world of literature. She in the Australia Council is the funding body, for arts grants, and she was the director of the literature board. But I always remember her telling me that, really successful novelists, almost inevitably their first novel was heavily autobiographical.
mm,
And it's almost like they had to write themselves out of the way. Um, yeah, and so you can see why that memory just jumped back into my head when you're talking there. It's like you've moved past that sort of very necessary stage, and now you're more and more curious about human nature in general, um,
Mm.
or human experience. It's still coming through you, of course, but less of that intense autobiographical function, perhaps more um, sort of fascination or curiosity or
Mm.
interest. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Uh, and I mean, I'm still tied to, I guess when you are young and when you are in that space of creating like music from pain and
Mm.
music from confusion, it's just interesting, but also clear like why young people are connecting to music that a person that's going through pain is creating because
Yeah.
it's all this relation and understanding they're in the same world. So yeah, I mean, now that I am kind of a little bit older, yeah, it's more, I guess it's just more like a more bird's eye view,
Mm.
um, more of like a macro view of things. Um, but I still have this attachment to that kind of pain just because it's so intense and it's so like you really feel it. And when you hear someone singing from that place, it's like, oh my God, they're really going through that. And there's
Yeah.
something about that intensity that I do miss. But yeah, so I'm really having to reframe my, I guess, my creative goals and
Yes.
what I want to share and what I find valuable in sharing, and what perspectives or like maybe unique angles I can look at life and myself or, particular just whatever's happening in the world, big or small, and how I can turn that into something that's like interesting for me first and foremost, because it's always going to be interesting to at least one other person, which is fine by me. But at the end of the day, it's like my connection to the art. I guess it's like that fundamentally like
Yes.
selfish perspective that artists have on the world that ultimately ends up not being selfish in a way because it connects people and helps people.
Yeah. Well, selfish is not quite the right word. I
Sorry,
know
probably
you.
not selfish.
Yeah. No, no, I know, but often people will use it because we're searching for the right word
Yeah,
to capture this sort of interesting thing that the more authentically self experience is expressed, the more universal it
mm,
appears to be. That people, and if you try to do that, try to manufacture it, doesn't work.
really difficult.
Yeah. Um, and it may be that you're just broadening your artistic purview. In other words, it's not that you can't, as you say, really love that, a great torch song,
Mm,
sung from the heart, Cree the Cur, sung from the heart. But but now there's a wider range,
mm,
um, and it may also made me think of something else, and I'm interested in your view. You sort of you had a metaphor there of sort of rising above and looking, more broadly, I guess, and more objectively at the world. And it made me think of mindfulness practices generally.
mm.
I'm just wondering whether you've had any experience of that, whether that's informing what you're experiencing.
Yes, I mean I've been on a few. Yeah, I mean my I guess my creativity and my self-discovery kind of personal development journey led me down the road of meditation and
Ah,
mindfulness. Yeah, and definitely dabbled in that. Went on some pretty eye-opening 10-day silent meditation retreats over the
uh,
years.
what these vipassana
Yeah, Vipassana.
style retreats? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So these are just for people who don't know what that means. That's a Buddhist type of meditation from what's called the old school, the Theravadan tradition,
Mhm.
and people. I assume it's a silent retreat where you're meditating for 10 days. You have the occasional chat with the, with the teacher,
Mhm.
but otherwise it's quite an intense experience. Is they the ones you've been on?
Yeah, and I feel like it lended itself well to where I was at, being like this kind of very isolated singer-songwriter. It was just more time to explore myself.
Yeah.
So I did relish it in a sense. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to doing things like that.
Well, of course, and this is not a podcast on the schools of mindfulness, but the general thing there is this
Mm,
capacity to step back from one's experience and allow it to unfold rather than identifying with it.
yes.
Um, and that move sounds very similar to the move you're describing in your creative process.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. In some way. Yeah, I mean, I also try and not really, I mean, we're always so stuck in our heads,
Yeah.
um, and thinking in concepts and, just trying to think our way through life. Um, so I guess I mean, my mindfulness, I guess I did struggle with that kind of detachment, um, with looking at life, through a broader lens because I don't know, I felt like I was quite disconnected from my body when I was
I see.
in
I
that
see.
in that
Yeah, yeah,
space.
yeah. I,
So I don't actually
yeah,
think
yeah.
it helped me, but with the more somatic therapies, I
Got it.
I have this, yeah, it's almost like this different angle of looking at, that bigger picture of things, but it's more rooted in and more grounded in reality than and in my body than from like a concept of looking down in, if that makes any.
No, no, it makes perfect sense. And there is a danger. I don't want to get sidetracked here, but there is a danger in that, in that intense Theravadan tradition that it can become a bit dualistic. I'm over here looking at the experience over there, whereas what you're talking about is a much more direct experience and a wordless
Mm,
experience, and that then takes us straight back to music because that's exactly what music is and what it evokes.
mm,
Let's just pivot.
mhm.
Um, you've been you've been touring, um, and I think you've got quite a few tours coming up. I had a quick look on the internet, and I'd be interested in just your experience of touring, the highs and lows, and what you've learnt about managing yourself with it all. What do you love about it? What do you find difficult? How have you how do you manage yourself to keep that connection that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a it's probably been one of the biggest uh experiences that I've faced that has really transformed the way that I live almost.
Mm.
Um, because I mean, prior to COVID, I was touring very intensely, um, but I was also very, very unhealthy, and I didn't have the skills to deal with what I was dealing with that I do now, and I just had. It's such a it's a lot of people see the glamorous side of touring, um,
Mm.
but yeah, there's obviously this really destructive and uh, really intense opposite. You know, just being away from family for one, just being away from everything that your routine, and you're just thrown into like chaos.
Mm.
But it's also met with so you're doing all of these things that are really quite grueling, and anyone would probably not have the best time.
Mm.
And then you're coupled with like these absolutely amazing experiences that totally transcend anything, and you just feel so connected to the moment and connected to people, and there's just this beautiful energetic transfer that happens when you're on stage and you're just in that zone. But yeah, I mean, before COVID, touring very unhealthily, had all of these emotions and feelings that I didn't know how to manage. And, I was like, before I would go on stage, I was like drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes just to calm down.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and then I would go on stage and I'd like close my eyes for the whole, like nearly the whole set, just because I was so afraid of this energy transfer that was wanting to happen.
Mm.
I'd get off stage and I'd have all of this buzz and adrenaline, and I'd do the same thing. I'd just drink and smoke and numb myself out, and I did that for years, and it was really unhealthy. But anyway, since COVID, I've learned some amazing techniques. It's kind of really been able to manage my energy before a show, during the show, and after the show. Um, so yeah, I mean, obviously that doesn't mean that I'm not feeling these things and that it's not intense and it's not I'm not having a great time all the time. There's still these lows,
Mm.
but I'm able to manage them a lot more now, which is an absolute blessing because yeah, I mean it also reflects. I'm actually talking to my therapist about this transition because this tour I've just come off touring for 3.5 months and it was the most, some of the best shows that I've ever played to the in the some of the most beautiful venues and these crazy experiences. And then you just come home and I'm just sitting on the couch and I'm like, okay, like what do I do now? Like it's like two different lives.
Yeah,
Really bizarre.
yeah, yeah. And I can almost hear our potential listeners wanting to know, well, what are you doing that's different? How have you learned? What are some of the strategies that you put in place? Because I think it'll be incredibly valuable to other people.
Mm. Well, I mean, the main thing during 2020, I studied this acting method actually called PEM, and it's uh, came out of Germany by this guy named Stefan Poedekamp. And yeah, he essentially was teaching um, actors and his theater. He's a director.
Mm.
He's teaching his actors how to kind of they were they were kind of doing. I mean, uh, I'm paraphrasing, and this is probably not
Mm.
entirely accurate, but um, there would be a scene where an actor needs to their parent, their loved one has died, and they need to be in grief, and for whatever reason in their personal lives, their connection with expressing grief is blocked. So they might have like a lot of anger come up culturally around releasing grief, and it just doesn't work well. So he
Mm.
came up with these physical movements to release individual emotions so that the actor could then have a clear emotion in the scene that they were acting. And
Mm.
anyway, like found out that it was transferable to people's well-being off stage and out of the studio, and it was really making positive impacts on their lives. So he was able to, yeah, translate this to other performing arts. And so I was getting, yeah, like there's different elements to it as well, vocal training and stagecraft, but then also the personal development side of things. So I was kind of taking all of these lessons and classes online during COVID. Um, and yeah, really like it was the first time where I was actually learning how to be an artist and
Mm.
learning how to have these practical tools that was specifically designed for performers. And I just never heard anything like that before. Um, and it was so transferable to every, aspect of my life. And, I'm
Yeah.
still practicing it today.
It's fascinating, and again, my mind is abuzz with questions and observations.
Mhm.
So we'll see where we go with this. But so I presume post learning that these approaches and having these sort of inner transformative experiences, your experience on stage is now different. I'm assuming, for example, you open your eyes to see the crowd. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's still it's such an intense thing when you've just got like hundreds and or thousands of
I
people
can, yes,
staring at you. Um, and I mean, I was always I was always a very, very shy child. So
yeah,
the idea of just standing on stage was the last thing that I ever thought I would be doing with my life.
yes,
But yeah, there is this softness now and real humanness with like seeing someone emotional or just wanting to just in because you come to a gig and you're especially with I guess my genre is like you come to experience something. So you're open to
yeah,
change and you're wanting the person on stage to be in that space, even if they're not there mentally, there is a performance element to it where
Yeah.
If you're clear enough in your body, you can, move someone, despite
Yeah.
if you're, you might be thinking about what's for dinner. Uh, but but yeah, being on stage now is really enjoyable, and I'm able to, really like look around and take in what I'm experiencing, and also being open with myself and as emotional as I can be,
Yeah.
to move people.
It's very interesting. I was reminded of there was a period in my career where I did a lot of fairly large scale public speaking, and crowds of 2 or 3 thousand, that sort of number, and around the world. And uh, like you, I'm a naturally introverted, shy person, um, and so at first, it was very stressful. But gradually, I found ways of turning it more into an intimate conversation.
Mm.
Um, and and I found this thing that if I would just look for the people whose heads were nodding or were smiling, and I'd find half a dozen of those, and I'd just move my gaze. So it's just like I was talking to a few people. Um,
Mm.
do you know what I mean? But you can see I'm really resonating with that sense that the shift from it became less about me in a sense, and became more about what they need,
Yes.
what they legitimately need. Yeah. And this takes us to another aspect of creativity that we haven't discussed, and that is the social dimension. In a broad sense, in my own modeling of creative process, it's an all-encompassing factor, and it contains what I call the intrapsychic factors, the things that we're doing, but we don't create in a vacuum. We're born into cultures, and we're born into families,
Mm.
and the and the creative in the expressive arts especially, it's all about communication, um, communication about what it is to be human, and uh, again, I think we're talking about a maturing of your creative art. This is another facet. Um, can you just talk to me a little bit about what you as an artist get from that connection, particularly say in performance? How do you think about it? How does it impact you? Where is its importance for you?
Forming on stage.
Yeah, and when there is a, it's hard to express, I know, but that connection that you feel.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. When at the end of the tour, I mean, I'm exhausted, but
Mm,
there is this my my body and my nervous system and just the way that I interact with the world. I'm so I just feel so connected, and I feel really calm.
mm,
And I think it's just, I think over the years, I've really, I mean, especially it was highlighted during COVID because we weren't able to play these shows, and
mm,
there was like this agitation in my system, and it was very particular, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, and it was actually my need to be on stage and to really connect with people, and yeah, have that, because it's a real test. It's like when I when I go on stage, something shifts, and I almost become like it's like this different version of me.
mm-hmm,
It's not, some artists kind of speak about like
mm-hmm,
like an alias, or like a completely different character. And I guess it's kind of true, but it's this part of me that exists. And it's almost like this better version of myself that I wish I was more in my day-to-day life.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but it's this real sense of, I think when I'm on stage and I am just completely just expressing myself, singing, and having people witness that, there's something very human about that, being seen by people that want to see you, um, and the stories that and the connection that they have to the art is so powerful. And it's just like this total feedback system that happens throughout a show or throughout a song, throughout a moment, even.
Mm.
Um, and there's just nothing like that for me, um, to be like that. And I never thought it took me a really long time to come to to discover like what performing meant for me and what I kind of got out of it. Um, but I mean, in saying that, there's also that this when you are seen by lots of people, it's obviously very revealing and you're very vulnerable and uh, it can be too much
Mm.
sometimes.
Mm.
And you really have to kind of, sometimes I don't want to be on stage and I don't want to be in front of a room full of people.
Mm.
I want to be in bed with the sheets over my face and
Yep.
just, hibernate. Um, and I think that's where like that kind of professional element to
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
turns on. Um,
Yeah. Again, and forgive me for mapping it onto my own experience,
no.
but um, for decades working as a therapist, there's plenty of times I didn't want to go into have a day worth of clients. Nothing against those individuals, um, but there's like you say, there's a professionalism that then kicks in. And one thing I found was, like I might be tired or I might be worried about stuff in my own life, and did you have a professional obligation as a therapist to put all that stuff aside,
Mm,
and your job is to drop that and be as fully present as you can, and to put all your attention onto this other person. And I would find by the end of the day I'd be tired, but my own problems didn't seem so big anymore. And it wasn't just by direct comparison to how big their problems were. It was something about the connection, and it sort of put things into perspective,
mm,
right? And I often felt, and I still do, felt very grateful to all those people for allowing me that intimate connection.
mm,
Um, and there's another little dimension to it. We were talking about meditation before, and I think often there's a lot of misconceptions about what meditation is, what mindfulness is, and certainly the primary way people think about it is sitting cross-legged, or on a stool or on a cushion, looking inward.
mm,
Um, but really, it's about being very, very present, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And one of the things I found in my research into creative process is this, what I called egolessness. So when creative people of all kinds, it could be a civil engineer, um, uh, when they're really, and I think performance is another example of it. When you're really in it, you forget yourself,
mm,
and there's a liberation from all the travails and worries and concerns about self. And there's something inherently healthy about that, something validating, something that keeps things in perspective. So I think there's a lot of, in a weird way, our conversation is we're joining the pieces together.
mm,
But I imagine, and because I remember my own experience, if I was doing a lot of public speaking, I'd find it pretty exhausting. Um, so when you come back from tour, is that also what you've learnt to do? Is a way to sort of recoup your energies to get rebalanced? What do you do?
I will also quickly add,
Yes.
with the performance side of things, I had a really interesting observation from my sister, and one thing that I think is like really pivotal to the experience of live performing for both the artist and the audience member.
Yeah.
My sister came to one of my shows after I'd started practicing PEM for many years. After COVID, she came to a show and she came up afterwards. She's just said to me, she's like, "I've never seen you sing like that before," and it really kind of took me back. Took me back because she's was one of the first people that have known that I sung.
Mm.
And what I kind of took from that was that, and she said that she felt so kind of inspired to see me singing so authentically. And I think one of the really amazing things about going to a live show and seeing an artist that is authentic is that, when we're walking down the street in our day-to-day lives,
Mm,
there's
mm,
so much
yeah,
cultural inhibition that we all uh, hold within our bodies, and
yeah,
we're not saying things that we want to say, and we're not being how we want to be. But there is this permission as soon as you walk in a venue, for the artist to be like that. And when you see that, when you see someone just expressing themselves really purely, it's very inspiring to take that energy into your own life and to,
yeah.
maybe I can say that too. So I just thought I'd throw that in there because I think
No,
it,
no, no. It's a well. There's your intuition kicking right in there, just because
yeah.
it struck you as, and I think it is highly relevant. Um, we're in one way I think of looking at the malaise of the modern world is there is a sort of crisis of authenticity
Mm,
because we live in such a performative age, um, where people are constantly engaged in what in psych we call impression management.
okay.
So they're highly self-conscious,
Mm,
performative, um, and social media has a large part to play in that. Selfies,
yeah.
um, and it's it's um, it's a really poor um, nutritionally. It's very poor for people. It's not enriching, and so when they come across something that's actually real, now, and this is the irony, isn't it? Because you're performing and in some ways acting, but that doesn't mean it's not real.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say
Well,
something there,
yeah,
Richie.
I think that's kind of the craft as well.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I do think there are entertainers and then there are artists.
Artists, I agree.
And
Yes.
there's it's not a bad thing to be an entertainer. Some people
No.
want to go to a show and be entertained, that's fine. But some people want to go to a show and feel something real.
Yeah.
And there's I love, yeah, people condemn like pop artists and stuff like that, but it serves a purpose and it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, going back to your question about coming home from tour,
Yeah.
um, the one thing I do love about touring is and playing shows is, I mean, and this is something a relation. The more that I am touring now, it is changing my relationship to creativity when I am home because, I mean, touring is very regimented. You have a very strict schedule. And for probably my brain that really loved engineering, it's like I get to the end of the day and I've finished my set and I can clock off and I feel like I've really achieved something. And
Mm,
there's this real, I love that. Like that's something that I really
yeah.
have to discover in my day-to-day life when I'm at home is like I can just keep like as soon as the day starts and like there's no end. Like it can get to 10 p.m. and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like I've achieved something. Um, and it's really frustrating.
Oh, I know that feeling so
Yeah.
well.
So I have to find other ways to, and I feel like it's a it's a physical sensation. So I'm really looking after my body. So I'm going to the gym, and like going to the gym is like when I tick that off, it's like my body's tired. It's like I've done something. It's like
Yes.
telling my brain that you've achieved something. But it's still like a part of this conditioning that I need to kind of work on, this sense of like accomplishment, perhaps when I am
Well,
back.
when you find the answer to that, will you tell me?
I'll let you know.
Because I've been struggling with this particular one all my life.
Mhm.
It drives my wife insane.
Mm,
Uh, because I'll say I don't feel like I've achieved anything today. But well, just a couple of thoughts anyway. One is I have started a practice. Sometimes I make it formal and I write it down, but mostly it's in my head. But when I put my head on the pillow, I first go to bed. I often, rather than thinking about what I didn't achieve today, because I often have quite a long to-do list, I write down what I did
mm,
and what I did that I wasn't expecting to do. and how I actually, it doesn't take very long. But 9 times out of 10, I feel like actually I got more done today than I thought I did,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think part of it is just thinking about, oh, I was hoping to get this done, I was hoping to get that done, I didn't get it done. So that's one, I think that's one entry into that dilemma.
Mm.
The other is to ask, well, who's the audience?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to say, yeah, it's the value. I mean, at the moment I'm living like in a share house situation. I've got this bungalow kind of out the back of the main house. I
Nice.
live with some friends of mine, who all have 9 to 5 jobs. Um,
Yes.
and I've noticed that n not them in particular, but sometimes some of my friends who aren't artists will ask me like what I'm doing today, and and I can sense myself like reacting.
Sort of tensing up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and it's just the value that people place on what is perceived as like an important thing to do with your time during the day. So
Mm.
I've kind of structured my life where I obviously have things to do, like admin and practical things that need to be done on my laptop. But then
Mm.
a large part of my day is to try and be open to the world. So, it's like, what are you doing today? I'm gonna go for a walk in the park, and I'm gonna try and be as connected as I can be to life and to myself. And gonna try and not feel guilty that I'm being lazy. You know what I mean?
I know. I can't sit still in my seat as you're saying this. You can see
Yeah,
me wriggling all over the place.
yeah.
Look, it's so interesting because uh, I mean, obviously, we have these structures deep within us.
Mm,
Some of them are sociological, about 9 to 5 job, etc., etc.
yeah.
But it also is also being we want to feel like the village thinks we're useful, right?
Yes.
And and so everyone else in the village is going off to their 9 to 5 job, and they can say, well, they've ticked it off, right?
Mm,
But of course, when you do an analysis of what a lot of people do in their 9 to 5 jobs, a lot of the time it's that they're complaining about what a waste of time most of their day was because they were in meetings they didn't need to be in, doing tasks, um, but at least it's structured. At least they clocked on and they clocked off, right? Um, but the research on creative process, there's a book called The Talent Code. I think you'd like it actually. It's about people who are the best at what they do.
mm,
What is it that they do? And it's largely about how they practice.
mm,
And and when I interviewed fiction writers for my thesis, and I was very interested in how they organise themselves. And pretty much they all had come to a conclusion that they needed to set up routines.
mm,
Um, and one writer, of course, made a literary analogy. She said, "I have the bookends of my day," and that was she'd drop her daughter off to school and pick her up. So in that time in between, that was her work. But they all had this way of dealing with this dilemma because it's actually quite hard to give oneself the space to be contemplative.
mm,
It's hard to. We want to busy ourselves with things that distract the mind and give us some sense of that we're being useful.
mm.
Um, but as I said, when you crack this nut, if you can call me and um, but I get it.
Yeah.
Now, I also get that we could go on, I think, riffing for quite some time here.
Mm,
But look, I think for no particularly good reason, I think we'll start to round it off here. But perhaps I could just say a few things, to pull things together here. Um, firstly, a heartfelt thanks to you for giving me time. It was absolute. We'd not met before, and listening to your songs, I knew I was really going to like you.
mm. Thank you.
And and this speaks to what you were saying before about being on stage and people connecting, and to say that how health promoting what you're doing is. And so it's important for you to take care of yourself because, you've been a companion of mine during this last week. And invariably I felt enlightened or felt lighter or felt, happy or felt in ways that, I could easily, unequivocally say were an improvement to my life. You know what I mean? So I think, and I know that this is, I think, the most important thing for well-being is to have some sense that we're making some sort of meaningful contribution, right? And the interesting thing I encourage you to do is, and I'm using air quotes here, to continue to be selfish.
Yes.
Yeah, in that sense of drilling into what is my experience, what is my genuine experience of the world, and that's an inherently very valuable thing to do, and something this, in a modern world, is kind of countercultural.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, not everyone has time to do it. So artists in particular.
Well, they're afraid to do it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
They're uncomfortable. They don't quite understand it. Except when they do, And there are these avenues in life, like live music venues, where people give themselves permission, to connect. So anyway, that's a very long and convoluted way of saying thank you.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. It's very, very kind.
And also, to obviously encourage people, if they're not already listening to your music, to listen to your music. I don't know where this project is, this Psychology to Live By, and then this project within that, the interviews with musical artists. I don't know where it's going to take us, but I hope, Harrison, that we can have another conversation sometime, perhaps from a more focused point of view. But for now, just to say thank you, and I commend you once again. And I look forward to our further conversations.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you for providing a platform to speak about these things, because I don't really get to speak about them too often. So I do appreciate it.
Oh, that's wonderful to know, actually. Thank you so much. All right, my friend, and till next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
You've been listening to the Psychology to Live By podcast. If you'd like to know more, go to my website at drchris.life. And please share the podcast with people you like, so they can like it too. And the gently harmonious music you've been listening to in the background is a song by Harrison called Be Slow.